Arachnophobia is a fear of spiders or other arachnids, and it's a pretty common phobia affecting a lot of people. It can be quite debilitating and disrupt day-to-day life and functioning, and it definitely did for me. Hi, I'm Ashley, and I used to be terrified of spiders. Maybe you are too, or you know someone that is, and you want to help them overcome this phobia. So basically, I'll be just walking you through some behaviour modification strategies that I used to overcome this particular phobia. So stay tuned. Before I discuss any of the strategies, I do need to issue a disclaimer. I am from Sydney, Australia, and in Australia we have a lot of venomous spiders, particularly the Sydney funnel web where I live. So safety is number one, and this needs to be taken into consideration before undergoing any phobia treatment. So first things first, you want to do an initial assessment to really unpack your fear of spiders. So this might be really looking into yourself and thinking about why you want to do this treatment in the first place, why you want to overcome this phobia, and just asking yourself questions about where did the fear come from maybe, what triggered the fear, what situations in particular that you find more full on than others. So whether you're out, say, on the street and you see a spider, or whether you're in your home and you see a spider, how do you react? Do you flee from the situation? Do you freeze in the situation? What are the emotional and behavioural reactions to seeing a spider? And this creates what's called the baseline. So we use that to compare later when the treatment is actually working. A major part of the assessment stage is establishing your level of fear, particularly towards spiders. So what is used to assess that is called the subjective units of distress scale, sometimes called the subjective units of discomfort scale. They're effectively the same, shortened for SUDS, and you can look it up online. It's widely available. So effectively it measures states of arousal or fear, 0 being the absence of fear and 100 being the total fear. The level 100 on the SUDS scale, or the total fear, is the ultimate fear scenario that you have around spiders. It is the catastrophizing fear. It is the highest level you can go at in terms of your fear. You're worried about that situation happening. It's basically what underpins your fear of spiders. And so what we do is we put it right at the top of the hierarchy. And what do I mean when I say hierarchy? Well, the SUDS scale is effectively going to become what's called the hierarchy of fear. So the hierarchy of fear effectively becomes a gradual steps towards the feared stimulus, or the ultimate fear, the total fear. So basically how that is established is you use the SUDS scale to correspond the level of arousal with certain situations with spiders that would lead up to that total fear. So for example, maybe looking at a picture might be 20 on the SUDS scale, whereas like maybe holding a spider would be 90 or even 100 on the SUDS scale. That might be your ultimate fear, is actually touching a spider or holding a spider. So basically you create those steps based on the arousal. So you have to do your own assessment and work out, well, actually, where am I at on these levels of fear, and then go from there. When creating the hierarchy of fear, it is a minimum of 10 steps. So you might have the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 corresponding to those levels of fear of the hierarchy. Ideally, it's really upwards to 20. So when I was undergoing my own gradual exposure therapy, I had 15 steps, and I found this was a really good amount to just have that gradual progression. It didn't seem like such a jump between one step to the other. So that is something to keep in mind as well, that sometimes the more steps are better, but just keep it under 20 and maybe above 10 as well. So what is the SUDS scale and the hierarchy of fear used for? Well, it's for the treatment and the intervention of the phobia. So the main intervention strategy that's used for treating phobias is called gradual exposure therapy. So corresponding to the hierarchy again of those gradual steps leading up to the total fear, you are actually going to do something called in vivo exposure, in vivo desensitization, which is working up those steps, gradually progressing through those steps in a real situation. So this might be actually looking at a picture of a spider, and it might be actually holding a spider in real life. So what happens when you're actually undergoing the treatment? So you've got your hierarchy of fear and your SUD scale, and you're going through that gradual exposure therapy in the in vivo desensitization. So what is happening in the moment? So effectively, before even going into any of those levels, you need to set a timer between around 5 to 10 minutes of exposure, 7 being the optimal time amount that you spend within that level of exposure. So this gives you enough time to sort of settle into the feared stimulus and really assess where you're at in terms of your arousal and your fear levels as well. There are certain things that you need to consider before moving up the hierarchy before each step can be completed. So for example, if your state of arousal, your state of fear is so high when you are undergoing one of the levels in the hierarchy, then you cannot progress to the next one. The goal is basically to not have such a high state of arousal. You want to reduce that level of arousal before even progressing in the hierarchy. Otherwise, it will not be an effective treatment at all, and you might actually end up being a little bit worse for it. Now, there is an important strategy that should be used in conjunction with doing in vivo desensitization treatment, and that is called reinforcement. So basically, you need to encourage yourself through these hierarchical steps. If you are seeking treatment that was with a professional or a therapist, they would be providing that reinforcement. So that would look like encouraging phrases such as, you know, you're doing a really good job, you're really brave. I know this is really hard, but you're getting through it. And it would be worthwhile if you're doing it by yourself, like I did, to write up those phrases on a wall and remember them and recite them effectively. Because when you're in the treatment, it can be very difficult in that moment when you do have that high level of arousal. But then you need to remember that you are brave, and this is a really big thing that you're doing, and you need to encourage yourself to get through it. This is also a really good opportunity to gain some social support from other people. So you might talk to your friends or family members or partner about you're actually undertaking this phobia treatment and get them involved in the process as well. The other thing as well is that you might need a trusted friend to help you out in some of these real life situations in the in vivo desensitization. So particularly a friend that is not afraid of spiders that can help you out. So for example, they might catch a spider for you and hold on to that spider until you're ready to deal with that spider in the hierarchy. After completing a level on the hierarchy, you want to do an assessment, basically revisiting the SUD scale and the hierarchy of fear and really plot out your new level of arousal. And you're going to use this at the end when you've gotten through all the steps in the hierarchy of fear as a comparison tool to see where you were and to see where you're at now. And once you get through all of those steps and your arousal and your level of fear has come down significantly lower than it was, it's time to celebrate. And it's time to celebrate with those who have supported you and yourself as well, because this was a really big thing to accomplish and you need to acknowledge that for yourself. That's very brave and well done. That's what you've got to tell yourself. Well done. But treatment is actually ongoing. So you need to maintain that reduced level of arousal and maintain the fact that you don't really have that phobia anymore. So this might look like putting yourself in situations that spiders might be in, and you might go beyond the hierarchy. You might create another modified hierarchy and progress through that as well with different scenarios. You might be the designated spider catcher within your household. So that's essentially all there is to it when you're undertaking a phobia treatment, and in this case, treating the fear of spiders or arachnophobia. This is what you do. So just to recap, you do your initial assessment and you see where you're at on your fear levels. Then you actually go through the gradual exposure therapy. So that's the in vivo desensitization. And then you continue to maintain that treatment well after you've undertaken the intervention. I wish you all the best if you're undertaking this yourself, and good on you as well. Remember that you're really brave and this is a really big thing.